Today we're going from this to this. I call this my base face. It's all the products that are just the ones that match me, the ones that stay consistent most of the time. Like 9 times out of 10, this is how I start my makeup look, and then I do like my color products on top of that. So starting off, I use Silk Pore, what's this called? Primer and Pore Minimizer. It is a mattifying primer, but it doesn't dry your skin out, which is amazing because it works for both oily and dry skin. Senegen's products don't necessarily need a primer to last a long time. They're already long lasting on their own, but it works to kind of fill in fine lines, pores, texture. It's like spackle for your face. So I put it on. I like to use a little brush, but you could also use your fingers, but you want to make sure that you don't like blend it into the skin, but more just kind of sit it on top of the skin, and it'll work to kind of fill in those divots. I don't know if that's really the right word. The unevenness to give you a smooth surface, and then you want to let it dry. So I usually like to give it like a few minutes. You can kind of feel it drying down if you do this on your skin. So while that's drying down, I like to start on my brows. You'll notice if you watch me do videos, I kind of bounce around a lot. And I want to say there's no rhyme or reason to it, but there kind of is. And it's mainly because I like to let things kind of set before I start on the next thing. And so I'm really just trying to work more efficiently. But if you're like, she's ping-ponging around, I have to do one thing at a time, that is fine. Don't feel like you have to do what I do. For example, I did the primer. I like to let it dry. So while it's drying, I'm gonna do the brow gel in my brows because I also like to let that dry before I fill them in. And so I'm just gonna put this in there. And then I like to use my tweezers, just the flat end of my tweezers, and kind of press it down. It gives a little bit of a laminated look, but it's not like a total lamination. I don't like my brows laminated. So there we go. I'm gonna let those dry before I fill them in. So you'll see I come back to that. Last thing before I start working on my face, before the silk is totally dried down, is my color correction. You always want to color correct before you use your tinted moisturizer or foundation. It'll actually help you end up using less concealer because you're kind of balancing out any of like the harsher distractions on your face, so that when you put on a tinted moisturizer or a foundation, it'll give you like a more even coverage, and then you can go in and conceal wherever you need to more. So instead of like piling on the concealer to try to cover up these dark circles, I use Candlelight Shadow Sense, which is like a peachy toned shade, and it works to color correct and balance out the dark purple undertones in my dark circles. You can see I'm just using a teeny little brush. I don't know if you can even see that brush. It's a E30 pencil brush, and I really like it because I can be really precise with where I'm applying the product, because this is a shadow, and so it dries down to a powdery finish, and so I do want to be careful that I'm not using too dry of products under the eye area. And so a little bit, oh my gosh, look at that difference. A little tiny bit specifically where I need it is much more effective than just like blending under the whole area. Now that the silk is dry, I've got my color corrector underneath my eyes. I don't have a whole lot of color correction to do on my face, but if I did, now would be the time to do it. So next we're going in with tinted moisturizer. This is the shade Light, and what I love about the tinted moisturizer is it's a color correcting tinted moisturizer, and so it evens out the skin tone, which makes you look like you have more coverage without actually being like a full coverage opaque product. So it evens out your skin and makes it look like your skin is just naturally even, and it sits well on the skin. It makes your skin still look and feel like skin. So I like to kind of just spread it out on my face. Oh, and another thing is it's color adjusting, and so it'll match you. It'll adjust up or down a few shades. So I can wear the same shade in the summertime that I do in the wintertime. Sometimes I have to add a little more bronzer, but most of the time it just adjusts and matches. So I like to spread it out with my fingers a little bit before I go in and blend it. That gives me more coverage when I do this way, because I let it sit on the skin for a little bit and just kind of slightly start to dry down, and it gives me a better coverage and a more smooth and even application. If I'm looking for just something like quick, easy, minimal, I want more of a sheer blend, I'll do put it on my face and then just go in and blend it with a brush, and it gives like a more subtle coverage. But this I want like more of the medium coverage. So now I've got my flat top kabuki brush. This is a Sigma F80, and press it into the skin. Wherever you press, that's gonna give you more coverage, and then swirling and swiping will blend it out and give you less coverage. You'll notice I don't go around my eye area because I know that I'm going to use concealer in that area, and so I don't want to have like too much product built up in that area. All right, next is bronzer. I need to add color back into my face. So I actually just like to use the deep shade of Tinted Moisturizer. So I just put on the light all over, and then I use the deep for bronzer. I've actually been doing this probably since I started wearing makeup in like 7th grade. Was instead of using a bronzer specific product, I just use a darker shade of foundation or powder or whatever, mainly because I've always been so fair, and so bronzers can pull so warm and orange on me, and especially 15 years ago they did, and so using a foundation or a powder was much more effective than an actual bronzer. So now I've got a little bit on the lid here, and work it into my brush. This is a F76 chiseled cheek brush, and I like to press it on my actual cheekbones for maximum lift. And also because this is a little bit of like a bronzing. I have a more in-depth video on that if you want to learn more about that, but I want this to kind of look like I just got naturally color from the sun, like naturally tan from the sun, not necessarily like chiseled shadows. So kind of just spread it in that area and then on my forehead. And you can see it blends so easily, so nicely, because it is more of a sheer formula. It's not super intensely opaque, and so it blends. It's really foolproof. And because I'm blending it into the same product, like I've already got light tinted moisturizer on, and then I'm blending more tinted moisturizer into it, it just blends really seamlessly, and the two shades kind of melt together and wear really well and really comfortable on the face. I know that like single layer makeup is huge right now, especially for like comfort and not feeling like you have like heavy makeup on. And you can do that with these products, but I don't find it necessary. It actually ends up taking more time to nail that technique, and it doesn't feel any different on the skin because these products have such a small molecular weight that they really just kind of like melt into your skin and like marry with your skin and feel so comfortable. So it doesn't feel like you're piling on loads and loads of makeup. All right, so bronzer is on. I've got some color back into my face. Next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of concealer. This is the light shade. I just do, can you see it? A tiny dot on my ring fingers. Rub them together, that's the word I'm looking for, to spread it out and warm it up, and then just press it in this area where I want that coverage. If there's any place on the face that I want more coverage, I'll kind of put the excess there. And then under the eye area, I let it sit. And this is like my biggest tip. If you've ever watched me do my makeup before, you've heard me talk about this, to let your concealer sit and start to set before you work to blend it. I'm not gonna let it set totally because then it's gonna be hard to blend, but let it start to set down. It's gonna warm up to your skin. It's gonna make it easier to blend because it's a little more like spreadable. But then once it starts to set, it is going to start to thicken up, which will make it more opaque. So it'll give you a fuller coverage with less product, so it'll result in less creasing. If you go in and put concealer on and then start to blend it right away while it's still at its thinnest, most malleable state, you're not gonna get as good of coverage from it. And so then you're gonna feel like you need to pile on more and more and more to get more coverage, and then you're gonna get more creasing because creasing is caused by excess product settling into fine lines. So there's my spiel, my trick with concealer. Let it sit and start to set before we blend it out. And that's why I put it right here, because that's where I want to need the most coverage. While that is setting, I'm gonna do my brows. I'm using the brown eyeliner pencil. So I just kind of like work my brush onto the pencil and then pinch my brush so that it has a nice sharp edge. And then I just fill in my brows. Let me know if you want like a more in-depth brow tutorial. I feel like I just don't really do a whole lot with them anymore. I use that clear brow gel and it actually has brow growth ingredients in it. And so I just don't feel like I have a whole lot to fill in anymore. I have a little bit of holes up here at the top of my arch, and that's kind of it. Sometimes I will like sharpen up this front edge too. This is the brow I gotta work on more. Do you see how it like curves weird? I don't even know why it does that. Well, I do know why. It's because my Botox is wearing off and I do it more conservative than I used to. And so nothing's like frozen in place. And so this muscle just pulls more, I guess. So I kind of want to flatten it out to make it match this side. Once the brows are filled in, I go over them. This is my trick for any redheads, any fake redheads. I use a tinted brow gel that I made. It's just our clear brow gel mixed with a little bit of the Auburn brow cream. And you can see it just kind of like reddens my brows a little bit, which helps them to match my hair more. I'm not going to fill them in with a red product because then I'd have like red hair strokes amongst the brown. And so that's not my goal. I just want to kind of overall tint them a little bit redder. Now I'm going to blend out that concealer under the eye area. So it's had some time to set. Now I'm just going to blend those edges and kind of work it into the other areas that I want more coverage, but not needing like the most coverage. So I kind of blend it here onto the lid a little bit. I blend it out underneath the eye. I blend it up into those fine lines. If you put too much product on the fine lines, you're gonna settle, you're gonna get creasing, it's just gonna be a mess. So putting it down below, letting it sit, and then blending it up just makes a much smoother application, wear, everything. Okay, so at this point, normally when I do my makeup, I would go in with all of my color products, all my finishing products. Color products are the things that change day to day based on the outfit that I'm wearing. I like to match my makeup to my outfit. So like cheek color, you know, I wear a different blush shade on different days. My eye color, I don't always wear the exact same eye makeup every single day, so that's gonna change. Those are pretty much, oh, and lip color. So those are the color pieces that kind of change, eyes, cheeks, and lips. And then my finishers are the products that I pretty much always finish with, which is usually eyeliner, unless I'm doing some type of look where I want a different eyeliner, but usually eyeliner and Snow Shadow Scents are always the same. My primer and mascara, or false lashes if I'm wearing false lashes, that's always gonna, you know, finish my look. And then my finishing powders as well. I usually wait until after I've done my colors to do my finishing powders, but I will show you them today because they could be considered part of the base face routine. I pretty much always do them. So first is a little bit of the medium powder, medium tinted powder. I just love the way that this kind of finishes off my bronze on my face. And especially if you have a hard time blending like your blush into your bronzer, doing this after you've done blush just kind of helps like melt it all together. So just a little bit. You could also use this on its own as a bronzer, but it's not gonna last as long as a cream bronzer will, and so I like to just finish the look with it, and it just gives a really nice, pretty blurred finish to the face. It's also a pretty magical powder. It is oil absorbing without being drying, so it helps to mattify the skin and absorb oils as they're being produced, but it doesn't dry out your skin. I've got super dry skin and I can use it. It doesn't cake up, it doesn't feel like crusty or heavy or dry. It's a really, really good powder, and it's super duper finely milled, and so it works really well in the under eye area. So for under eyes, I always like to do one last little kind of blend of the concealer to make sure that there's no excess product settling. And then my second biggest tip when it comes to your under eyes, maybe I should just do a whole nother video on under eyes. Let me know if you want that. My second biggest tip when it comes to under eyes is make sure that your concealer is fully set and dry before you powder. Fully set and dry before you powder. Senegen's concealers especially don't need a powder to set. They're self-setting, and a lot of other concealers are self-setting as well. And so if you think about like when you mix flour and water, how it'll make a paste and then it'll harden. And if you have a malleable surface underneath that and it starts to move, you're gonna get cracks in it. And that can kind of happen with your concealer if you press a dry powder into a wet concealer. It's gonna force it to set too quickly, and then it'll crack when your skin moves, which inevitably it does because the skin around your eyes is super thin and your eyes move the most. Well, your eyes and your lips. So anyway, make sure your concealer is fully set before you finish with a powder. The only exception I have to that is every now and then if I want like a really flawless, like full coverage, airbrushed look underneath my eyes, is I'll actually blend my concealer with powder, but that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, I'm using this little puff from Rose and Ben. I'm pressing the powder in. This is like semi-baking. It's not putting too much product under there. This is a really great baking powder if you do like to do that baking. My skin is so dry, and so I don't typically like to like fully bake, where you put like a ton of product on, let it sit for a while, and then brush it away. So I just do like a little quick press and then swipe away. And I also did it in the center of my face. And then I will just, it's summertime here, and so I get a little sweaty. I live in Arizona, it's hot, so I just like to finish the rest of my face with that powder. All right, that is the look. It's not really a look, this is the base face. So now I'm ready to go in with my color products and finish off the look. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. I will list everything out in the caption below so you can shop there. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.